for me, like I'm afraid to be vulnerable because I don't know how the person is going to receive my message or my information that I'm saying.
Okay.
Like I don't know if they're going to be receptive to it, or I don't know if they're going to judge me for it. It's like you don't know how that person is going to respond, or how that person is going to act, or how that person is going to think of you after you've vulnerable with
All y'all know we about to get into some things. We back at it. We getting uncomfortable. We getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. That's why I got my blanket. I'm in a bed today. Um, I'm Charles, and this is, of course, my good host.
Bree. Hey
Hey
y'all.
y'all. So today we are uber comfortable.
Yeah, because we over here eating.
Well, I got me a little piece of pound cake that me and Alex love. Like we go to the mall, and it's this girl in there she sells butter cake. So good. But today we're going to be talking about um, why are you scared to be vulnerable? It's a good one. It's a doozy. But okay, you can start it off today. What do
I'm
you feel
I'm gonna
about
start it off.
you gonna start it off
So
today? Hey,
okay, so
just dig right in.
I feel like sometimes for me, like I'm afraid to be vulnerable because I don't know how the person is gonna receive my message or my information that I'm saying.
Okay.
Like I don't know if they're gonna be receptive to it, or I don't know if they're gonna judge me for it. It's like you don't know how that person is gonna respond, or how that person is gonna act, or how that person's gonna think of you after you've vulnerable.
Exactly. Like you don't know
Like
what's
that's
going through their
scary.
mind. You don't know
Yeah.
is going through their mind. So you just feel like you or believe that you have to sometimes even not be vulnerable because you would rather keep quiet to keep the peace. And I am a known person to I just keep quiet to keep the peace because I would rather just not say anything or,
Hmm.
not be vulnerable in a situation because in my experience, I've tried to have a space where I was vulnerable with somebody, even friends, like I was vulnerable with them and it blew up in my face. And I'm just like, I was coming to you about something that made me feel a certain type of way,
Hmm.
and you're taking it personal. And all I wanted to do was talk about it and for you to hear me. And the friend didn't even hear it the correct way. She just stopped talking to me. At times, it's like you hold back. And then what's bad about that is now you pushing it down, but it might come up later. And, how do you feel about
That's
that?
true. Now, when you say later, like the same situation happened and you don't speak on it,
The first time it happens again, and then you either how do you think you would address it? Because then you've kept it in, and now the other person that you weren't vulnerable with in the first place, they're sitting there like, "Whoa, like I didn't
like,
even
wait
know
a
this was
minute,
a problem." Like because you weren't vulnerable with them in the first place because you're scared of how they're going to react. Where do you think that comes from?
where does that come? Oh, maybe the past.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the past because maybe you were vulnerable in a situation
Right.
and you thought somebody was going to perceive the message a certain way, but they took it to a whole different level. And then
Mm-hmm.
now, like, you're guarded
Mm-hmm.
and you're just like, okay, I'm scared to be transparent. I'm scared to be vulnerable and express X, Y, and Z because how somebody else. But then it goes to like, you can't you can't judge every situation as the same. Like everyone is different.
Right.
Ooh, that's tough.
It's tough, and it's it's almost bad in a way. Well, not almost, but it's kind of to me. I believe it's like you're bringing your past
Hmm.
into your present when you shouldn't be doing that because it's things like I learned, of course, in therapy where I have to know, like, look, I can't bring this situation, this old bad situation, into this current situation. Like, I know for a fact that I'm still working and healing on myself, but I've learned things that that taught me to be able to not bring the past into the present, because bringing the past where it needs to stay in the past into the
Yes.
present is detrimental to, it could be detrimental to friendships, family, and even a relationship. Like, I believe talking to your partner and having communication with the uncomfortable conversations like the ones that we have
Mm-hmm.
are the ones that are needed. I feel like not saying anything because you are scared to be vulnerable is almost like, it's just so toxic. It's a toxic
Mm-hmm.
trait that we learn from, I believe, past traumas. And I'll get back into talking into past traumas now. Is like you're you're letting something from your past, a trauma, come into your present, and you're allowing that to still become a trauma, and it's still hindering you in a way. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to learn from that and be able to communicate and be able to sit down with a friend, a family member, a partner, and be like, look, I need to hold this space and I just need you to hear me. I'm not trying to, cause a rift or any drama or anything like that, but this is something that I'm feeling, and I feel like I believe that I can freely speak with you, and we can have an adult conversation. And this is just something that made me feel this way. And I want to be able to talk to you about it and not let it be a big thing. Like, I just want us to talk about this because it's on my chest and get it
Mm-hmm.
out, just so that we know that we're transparent with each other. I had to be vulnerable the other day, like sometimes you have to apologize because you were wrong, or in a situation like, okay, I was wrong, I need to apologize. And that's a part of being vulnerable, is being able to talk to your partner, talk to your family member or your friend and be like, look, I was wrong, I need to apologize. So that's being vulnerable. And while, yes, we're scared to be that way, we cannot let our past traumas dictate how our present is going to go. Because if we do, then we're still sitting in that past trauma. And that means that we haven't even worked on ourselves. That means that we haven't worked on our trauma.
Speaking of a situation of being vulnerable and why I'm so afraid to be vulnerable. So I
Mhm.
recently had my surgery, probably like what,
Right.
a
Yeah,
month
I remember.
ago.
How are we doing after
Uh,
that, though? Little sidebar.
Healing is ugly. So
Healing is
that
ugly.
could be another conversation.
Mhm.
With me having my surgery a week ago, I had to be vulnerable. Like I had to ask for help.
Right.
For a perfectly good example, my mom had to wash me up. And I told her, I
Mhm.
said, like, wow, I have to be like real vulnerable, like, because I'm used to doing this on my own.
Right.
However, right now, due to my situation, I'm not able to do it. So I had to be vulnerable. And that was like hard.
Yeah.
That was hard. And then plus like asking for help, like for my husband help. And then my
Mhm.
sister was here for like asking her for help. Like that was hard because like I'm so used to doing it
Doing it
on
on
my
your
own
own.
or being able to do X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? So like that was tough.
We're gonna have, and that's the part about, I guess, evolving and healing, is like, as we grow older and we see and hear different things and different stories,
Mm-hmm.
it it lessens the fear of being vulnerable. Like, I'm scared to be vulnerable sometimes still, but I just believe it's a part of life. Like, we talk about things, and that's what you need to do in relationships. You need to be able to talk and be transparent with each other, and move past things and grow together. And that's what I'm saying, is like, being vulnerable helps you grow. And
Yes.
it that situation in which you having to talk to your mom or asking your mom to do something or your husband to do something for you, I guarantee you it helped you grow and realize, like, we can't always do everything on our own. Like,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we are going to need to ask for help. Sometimes we are going to have to be vulnerable, and we have to be like that little inner child, scared to do something or scared, but we have to be grown up to enough to know, like, this ain't gonna kill me if I'm vulnerable with her or
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable with him. I believe it also helps the relationship with the person that you're being vulnerable with,
Yes.
because that person now feels like this person really trusted me and loves me enough to ask me for help or come to me and speak to me freely, because I'm safe in their mind. Like, your mom
Mm-hmm.
is safe in your mind. Your husband is safe to you. Alex is safe to me. Like, I feel like I can go to him and be vulnerable enough to, say I'm feeling down or I feel some type of way. And I could go to T and I could be vulnerable with her. And we have to build that up from all that fear of being vulnerable. And this is, while yes, her and I both sound like we aren't that scared of being vulnerable, we still scared.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah, yeah,
these
definitely.
conversations, I believe that these conversations need to be had so that other people can view our conversations and be like, look, yeah, I'm scared of being vulnerable, but if these two can do it, I can be vulnerable too. I believe also that, going back to it, my question to you was, where do you think that comes from? I believe being scared of being vulnerable comes from, like you said, past traumas. And it comes from not being able to open up to somebody. You tried to open up to somebody that you
Hmm.
thought you could open up to and you felt safe opening up to, and in turn it made you scared to do it in your next, the next person or your next relationship. Like, yeah, I was the beginning of this relationship, I was scared to be vulnerable. I'm like, I always think of the worst.
Yeah.
I think
But
of the
where
worst.
does that come from though?
I think of the worst case scenario because I always think of the worst case scenario. You could ask my mom, like she won't answer the phone sometimes because she might be in the shower. But here go me thinking, is my mom like in a car accident? Is something happened? Like,
Hmm.
did somebody kidnap my mom? Like, I think about the worst case scenario. I don't know. I gotta stop thinking of the worst case scenario all the time.
Yes.
I have to stop thinking about being the worst case scenario. And that's what stemmed from my being scared of being vulnerable came from as well, because it's like, I'm scared of being vulnerable because I'm scared of the worst case scenario. When the worst case scenario, 9 times out of 10, don't even happen.
Yeah.
It does not even happen. To me, now I look at it as being vulnerable is actually a really good, it's really good
It is.
because,
It means that you got the courage to sit there and express how you feeling. You know what I mean? But you got the courage to sit there and be you. And
mm-hmm,
that takes a lot of courage for somebody to be their authentic self.
exactly.
That takes a lot of courage. I have a personal question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Were you scared to be vulnerable? Look at your face like you know what I'm about to ask you.
I feel like I know what you're about to ask me.
Were you scared to be vulnerable and tell people that you're gay?
Listen, if we even want to get into that story of me coming out, my
Hmm.
mom called me and cussed me out. She didn't really cuss me out, but did I feel vulnerable? Let's start from the very first time I talked to my mom. I felt very vulnerable. I was very scared to be vulnerable with my own mother, but I end up that night I was vulnerable with her. But that was the night that I got so drunk. 15 degrees outside. So yeah, it was during the holidays. It was cold. So I got out the car and I was like walking like this because I was cold. And my mom came in the house and she was like, "Are you gay?" I was like a deer caught in the headlight. I looked
Like,
at my
hi,
dad.
how
My
you
dad.
doing? Did you have a good night? He caught you
I
by
looked at my.
surprise.
I looked at my dad. He looked at me. I was like, mind you, I was 21. I was 21 at the time. Just like, and I came out when I was 21. I went up and she just went upstairs, and I could tell my mama knew. My mama always know when I'm lying, and I know, like now I know when people lie to me. I get that gift from her, so
Hmm.
she knew I was. My mom knew I was lying straight through my teeth. I cannot lie I cannot lie worth nothing. You can tell when I'm lying. If I'm lying, I'm dying because I can't lie. I went upstairs, I went to sleep, and then the next day I got vulnerable with her. And as I was packing my bag, I asked her, I was like, "Can you come in my room?" She was like, "Yeah." And I was so scared as to how she was gonna react. So I told her, I was like, "I'm curious. I don't know what I am right now. I'm just I'm trying to figure myself out. I'm just, trying to figure out who I am." I could still tell that she knew that something was up. But in that moment, it really was true. I was like, I didn't know myself. Like, I knew I was gay, but I didn't. I was
Hmm.
telling because I still didn't know myself. I was still trying to figure myself out in life. So I just went, and that's what I, told her. And I wasn't lying because I was telling the truth. I'm trying to figure myself out. But I've always known I was gay. When she did finally find out, it was actually a picture that one of my family members shows a picture of me and Ray, little Ray, and I had came home and bestie Ray had me and him always like for some odd reason me and Ray always had like the fashions that kind of like matched
Mm-hmm.
each. I took a picture on his back and like he just had me on his back and I was like doing like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just saw like we had just saw each other. I had just came back home and that we took that picture because I just got in that night and everybody was excited to see me. So we were all taking pictures. And that picture got showed to my mom as well and was like, "Do you think this is weird?" And my mom knows Ray to be my best friend because we always in high school together. I don't think she thought it was weird, but for somebody else to bring it to her, she thought, okay, wait a second. So she called me and she asked me, she said, I'm gonna ask you one last time. I could tell she had her lips tight. She said, I'm gonna ask you one last time and you better not lie to me. She said, are you gay? And I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah. And she was like, okay, now you have to talk to your dad. I was like,
Oh yeah, like no, abort that mission,
I
please.
wanted to hang up that phone so fast because that was also me having to be vulnerable and tell the person that I like, my dad was, I mean, that's my dad. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to disappoint him. Like, I felt like I was going to end up being a disappointment. And so I figured, I thought how he was going to react was he was never going to talk to me again. So that's a part of being vulnerable and being scared to be vulnerable because it's like, I have to be my true, authentic self with you and tell you me, who I am. And now I gotta see how you gonna take it. Are you
Yeah.
gonna take it or leave it and disown me as your son? And that's another reason why I left in the first place because I was just like I seen TV shows and movies where people would come out to their parents and their parents kick them out. Now, mind you, my mom and dad looked at me like I was crazy when I told them that. They're like, we wouldn't have never kicked you out our house. Like, but I'm just like, oh, that's what I thought was gonna happen. And
Mm-hmm.
so I thought about the worst case scenario. Here we go again.
Yeah.
Like worst case scenario. So let me figure out how to leave without y'all having any control over me. Because if I would have went to college, they, of course, my parents would have to pay for it or student loans or whatever. But I'm like, if I join the military, can't nobody tell me nothing because I do what I want. Bring it around full circle. Yes, I was very scared of being vulnerable about coming out. um, Another vulnerable moment for me was having to tell my counselor that I need help because I was seeing a therapist and having to be honest with her and tell her that I was attempted suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Having to even still say those words to people, it's like a rock in my throat trying to say it because it's just like, yeah, I did it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a part of growing and it's a part of being vulnerable and loving yourself in a way because it's like, look, this is my truth and this is who I am. And I need you to hear me and I need you to not judge me when I talk about it. You know,
Right.
when I was vulnerable with my therapist, it helped me grow. I broke down crying when I told her because I wasn't going to tell nobody. I was going to live the rest of my life and just keep on pushing. But I think that was the best thing I've ever done besides telling my boyfriend yes to be his boyfriend.
Ah.
I think that's the best thing I've ever done is be honest in that moment because who knows where I would be mentally if I never got the help that I got. And that's why I say that being vulnerable doesn't have to be just with partners or with friends or family. It has to be you have to be vulnerable with yourself at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day. Because if you're not vulnerable with yourself, you can't be vulnerable to anybody else.
That's true.
So that's like you sitting and being vulnerable with yourself is like being honest with yourself and being transparent with yourself. And I think that it's amazing how much you can do with vulnerability.